Welcome to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
If you've spent any time reading up on contemporary British fiction lately, you're likely already familiar with the structural brilliance of Clare Leslie Hall's novel.
Oh, yeah. Broken Country.
Broken Country, exactly. And our mission today is to really unpack the layers of this narrative for you. We want to look under the hood.
Right. To examine how Hall constructs this just devastating portrait of grief, class tension, and the long shadow of our pasts.
Yeah, so let's ground ourselves immediately in the opening premise, because it is quite a hook.
It really is.
We are in London, 1969. For anyone who hasn't walked past it, the Old Bailey isn't just a courthouse. It is the beating heart of the English criminal justice system.
Oh, absolutely. Those imposing wood-paneled walls, they instantly tell you the stakes are absolute.
Exactly. So here's the setup. A farmer is dead from a single precise gunshot wound to the heart. A man is sitting in the dock on trial for murder.
And up in the public gallery sits a woman named Beth. She's silently practicing her testimony.
Right, holding a secret that could alter the entire verdict. It's such a chilling opening.
It's a striking way to open a novel, primarily because Hall is playing this structural trick on the reader right from page 1.
How so?
Well, she gives us a murder mystery, but mechanically, the mystery is a framing device. It's a Trojan horse to explore much deeper thematic territory.
Right.
The narrative braids together two distinct timelines, 1955 and 1968. By placing the endpoint, the trial, at the very beginning, she forces us to read the past not just as a sequence of events,
but as a slow-burning fuse.
Exactly. We're constantly looking for the psychological fractures that will eventually lead to that gunshot.
I want to start by looking closely at how those fractures originate in the before timeline, back in 1955.
The foundation of it all.
Yeah. The story anchors itself on the collision of two completely disparate worlds. We have Beth Kennedy, a local Dorset village girl.
She's walking through an estate with her head buried in a volume of Emily Dickinson.
Yes, and she quite literally bumps into Gabriel Woolf.
And Hall uses that encounter to immediately establish the socioeconomic markers that will define their entire relationship.
Right, because Gabriel is the heir to the sprawling Meadowlands estate.
But when Beth meets him, he's not presenting as the intimidating lord of the manor. He's wearing his father's oversized tweed fishing trousers.
It's a very disarming image.
Very much so. They sit by this incredibly idyllic estate lake. They're sharing a thermos of tea, custard creams, and Garibaldi biscuits.
Which Gabriel calls squashed fly biscuits.
Right, and it creates this temporary illusion of a classless space.
But that illusion is shattered almost immediately. I mean, I find it fascinating how Hall juxtaposes the warmth of Beth's background with Meadowlands.
Because Beth's parents are grounded teachers who genuinely care for one another.
Exactly, and you compare that to the freezing, gilded reality of Meadowlands. The architect of that coldness is Gabriel's mother, Tessa Wolfe.
Oh, Tessa.
Yeah.
She operates as the embodiment of the exclusionary English class system.
She is terrifying.
She really is. She isn't just a snob. She is a territorial predator guarding her social standing. We see this play out during a highly uncomfortable dinner party at Meadowlands.
Tessa is hosting these glamorous American guests.
And she deliberately orchestrates the evening to alienate Beth. She serves beef Wellington, but she serves it practically raw in the middle.
Which is such a specific, calculated detail for the time.
It really is.
We have to remember the historical context for you listening. Beth grew up during post-war British rationing. Meat was scarce. Serving it practically bloody was a luxury.
Right. It was a culinary signal of immense wealth that Beth had never encountered before. Tessa is weaponizing food.
It's an act of psychological warfare.
Absolutely. Tessa publicly belittles Beth, heavily insinuating that she is merely a cheap, temporary summer fling for her aristocratic son.
She is drawing a hard line in the sand.
Demonstrating to Beth that the cultural gap between her and Gabriel is unbridgeable.
And I think what makes this so tragic is that Tessa is essentially right.
Yeah, she is.
When Gabriel goes to Oxford University, he seamlessly integrates into a wealthy, glamorous literary crowd. Beth visits him, and the contrast is agonizing.
She is suddenly surrounded by women in cashmere and pearls. She's feeling the sting of that class divide more acutely than ever.
But notice how Hall handles the inevitable betrayal here.
It doesn't come from a dramatic confession or a confrontation.
No, it comes through a quiet, almost accidental discovery. Beth is waiting in Gabriel's room, and she spots a green notebook.
She thinks it's a draft of the novel he's been talking about writing.
But it's his diary. And I always wonder about the ethics of reading someone else's diary in literature, but...
Here, it serves as the ultimate unfiltered truth.
Exactly. Beth reads a passage that effectively ends her youth. Gabriel writes, "Louisa's in love with me. She ended up spending the night with me."
Louisa being the beautiful American daughter from that awful beef Wellington dinner party.
It's a devastating confirmation of all of Tess's cruelest insinuations.
But rather than breaking down, Beth takes agency. She dumps Gabriel right there at the bus station and returns to Dorset.
And this is where the novel executes a massive thematic pivot.
Because Beth finds solace and eventually love with Frank Johnson.
A steadfast, hardworking local farmer who has quietly adored her for years.
The shift in the prose here is remarkable. Hall moves us from the slightly naive, intoxicating romance of Oxford to the gritty, highly physical reality of agricultural life.
Beth doesn't just marry Frank. She completely immerses herself in Blakely Farm.
She's out there spotting illnesses in the sheep, driving the combine harvester. She is fully covered in the dirt and sweat of this new life.
It's an immersive reality that acts as an antidote to the superficiality of Gabriel's world.
Yes. And Hall perfectly captures the raw, visceral nature of this life in the scene where Beth and Frank's son, Bobby, is born.
Oh, that scene is intense.
It is a chaotic, uncontrollable moment. A massive storm knocks down the telephone poles, cutting the farm off from the rest of the world.
Beth goes into rapid labor.
And Bobby is delivered right on the slate floor of the farmhouse kitchen by Frank's rebellious teenage brother, Jimmy.
That slate floor birth really grounds the family dynamics.
Yeah.
Bobby becomes the absolute center of their universe.
He's this golden boy who is completely attuned to the rhythms of the farm.
He loves Elvis Presley. He insists on milking the cows on Christmas morning before even looking at his presents.
And he names the sheep things like Mrs. Tiggywinkle.
Which is so endearing. But Bobby's narrative function goes beyond just being a beloved child.
Oh, definitely. He acts as a profound healer for the traumatized men in the Johnson family.
Frank's father, David, is a stoic, deeply emotionally closed-off widower.
But Bobby manages to coax him back to life, getting him to laugh and sing old music hall songs.
And Jimmy, who is spiraling into a dark path of heavy drinking and fighting, finds a grounding sense of purpose in being Bobby's hero.
Bobby is the emotional glue holding this entire family together.
Which makes this subsequent tragedy almost unbearable to read. At just 9 years old, Bobby dies.
And Hall doesn't focus heavily on the medical details of his passing.
Instead, she dedicates her energy to exploring the vast, suffocating void his death creates.
I want to spend some time on this because the way Hall writes about grief here is incredibly raw. It physically freezes Beth and Frank in time.
It's a brilliant observation. Often in literature, grief is portrayed through weeping or dramatic breakdowns.
But here, Hall portrays grief as a paralyzing silence.
The guilt and pain are so immense that Beth and Frank simply stop talking about it.
They use the grueling, bone-deep physical labor of the farm as a psychological defense mechanism.
If they exhaust themselves entirely every single day, they don't have the energy left to face the silence in their marriage.
And the specific details Hall uses to anchor this grief are heartbreaking. Beth carries this messy macrame bag everywhere she goes.
Hidden inside it, she obsessively keeps a single, heavily creased photograph of Bobby bottle feeding an orphan lamb.
She checks it constantly. It's her secret, desperate tether to a child she isn't allowed to mourn out loud.
I often think about the psychological toll of that kind of rural isolation. When you are geographically cut off and your partner is emotionally inaccessible.
How long can you survive in that kind of pressure cooker?
It's a profound question about human endurance, and it perfectly sets the stage for the catalyst that shatters this fragile ecosystem.
We move into the 1968 timeline. Gabriel Wolfe returns to Meadowlands.
Gabriel's return is heavily loaded with irony. He has achieved the literary success he always talked about. He's a famous Vogue featured author.
But his personal life is fractured. He is divorced from Louisa and struggling as a single father to raise his 10-year-old son, Leo.
And the inciting incident that forces these two timelines to collide is brutal.
Gabriel brings a golden lurcher dog named Rocket to the estate.
One afternoon, Rocket escapes, charges into Frank and Beth's field, and begins to massacre Frank's newborn lambs.
It is a scene of absolute visceral horror. The blood, the terror of the sheep, the sudden destruction of their livelihood.
Frank, protecting his flock, exercises his legal and moral right as a farmer. He shoots the dog dead.
But Hall complicates the morality of this action instantly.
Right, because Frank has to pull the trigger right in front of little Leo, who comes running over the hill just in time to watch his beloved pet die.
It is an intensely traumatic moment that acts as a match, striking dry kindling.
It instantly triggers all the deep-seated historical resentment the village holds toward the careless, insulated, wealthy class up at the big house.
I have to say, I sometimes question Beth's motivations in the aftermath of this incident.
Instead of closing ranks with her husband, she crosses the divide.
She aches for her dead son, and she projects that onto this motherless, traumatized 10-year-old boy.
She helps Leo bury the dog, eventually finds him a new puppy named Hero, and begins going over to Meadowlands to babysit while Gabriel writes.
Is she genuinely trying to help Leo, or is she subconsciously looking for an escape from the suffocating silence of her own home?
That ambiguity is exactly what makes the novel so compelling. It's likely a bit of both.
Beth is drawn to the void in Leo because it mirrors her own. But by crossing that physical and class boundary, she initiates a highly dangerous emotional entanglement with Gabriel.
They develop a routine. Gabriel starts pouring her a glass of wine at the end of the day.
And then he does the one thing that Frank, paralyzed by his own guilt, absolutely cannot do.
He asks Beth to tell him stories about Bobby.
That detail struck me as the most dangerous part of their entire dynamic. It's not a physical affair, but the psychological intimacy is off the charts.
Consider the power dynamics of that moment for you listening. For years, Beth has lived in a world where her son's name is essentially taboo.
Frank's grief is so intertwined with guilt that any mention of Bobby breaks him.
But Gabriel doesn't carry that baggage. He didn't know Bobby. He has no guilt regarding the boy's death.
By asking for those stories, Gabriel provides Beth with a safe space to resurrect her son through memory. It is a profoundly seductive lifeline.
It is a lifeline for Beth, but it acts as a slow poison for her marriage. Frank is acutely aware that she is spending time at Meadowlands.
And the resentment within him and within the wider village begins to boil over.
Hall handles the ticking clock to that 1969 Old Bailey trial masterfully.
You can feel the tragedy approaching, particularly when we look at the class warfare playing out at the local pub the Compass is in.
The pub scenes are where Hall really tightens the screws. She brilliantly contrasts the current gritty reality of the village with the lingering memory of Gabriel's world.
The village remembers Gabriel and Louise's wedding years earlier, which is a massive, extravagant affair featured in Tatler.
Complete with Norman Hartnell dresses, blue orchids, and French champagne.
Right, and Hall includes that wonderful, bittersweet detail that Beth and little Bobby actually hid behind a yew tree in the graveyard to watch that wedding like spies.
It highlights how utterly separate their lives were. Now, contrast that memory with the reality inside the Compass's pub.
You have sticky cider floors, rusty farming equipment on the walls, and a community on edge.
The tension peaks during a celebration at the pub. They are supposed to be celebrating Jimmy's engagement to Nina,
a glamorous local girl who has finally managed to pull Jimmy out of his dark spiral. It should be a moment of communal joy.
But Jimmy has been drinking heavily, fueled by his own unresolved grief and a fierce protective loyalty to his brother Frank.
When Gabriel makes the severe miscalculation of walking into the pub, Jimmy verbally assaults him.
He tells Gabriel in no uncertain terms that he isn't welcome, that his kind brings nothing but destruction and to get out.
The local policeman actually has to intervene to stop a physical brawl.
The atmosphere is incredibly volatile. And right in the middle of this powder keg, Hall introduces a secret meeting that accelerates everything.
Louisa, Gabriel's ex-wife, is visiting from America. She arranges to meet Beth secretly at the pub.
And Louisa drops an absolute psychological bombshell.
She tells Beth that her marriage to Gabriel failed because Gabriel never actually stopped loving Beth.
Louisa looks her in the eye and says, "It's not too late."
It's not too late. Mechanically, what Hall is doing with that line is validating Beth's internal regression.
For years, Beth thought she had buried the girl who loved Gabriel, just as Frank thought he could bury his grief beneath the soil of the farm.
Louisa's words give Beth permission to entertain a reality she thought was dead.
But embracing that past threatens to utterly destroy the fragile life she has built with Frank.
This brings us back to the sheer brilliance of the novel structure. We know from the very first page that a farmer is dead.
But Hall meticulously obscures the identity of the victim and the shooter until the final act.
We are given all these perfectly placed, highly volatile pieces. Is Frank sitting in the dock at the Old Bailey because he killed Gabriel out of a jealous, grief-fueled rage?
Or is Gabriel on trial for killing Frank to finally reclaim Beth?
Or is Jimmy involved, given his explosive anger, his history of violence, and his intense loyalty to Frank?
If we synthesize all the thematic threads we've discussed today, the core takeaway becomes clear.
Broken Country isn't ultimately about the mechanics of a murder.
No. It is a profound exploration of how unhealed trauma and festering socioeconomic resentments act as a slow-burning fuse.
It demonstrates with agonizing clarity that you cannot outwork trauma and you cannot outrun your past.
The past versions of ourselves never truly disappear. They just wait in the wings, ready to step back onto the stage the moment the conditions are right.
It is a heavy but deeply necessary realization.
And it leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up today's deep dive. I want you to put yourself in Beth's shoes for a moment.
Picture yourself sitting in that wood-paneled courtroom at the Old Bailey, practicing your testimony.
Imagine you are the sole keeper of a devastating secret. A secret where the absolute truth could permanently destroy the only family you have left in the world.
What do you do?
Do you honor the truth of the court? Or do you lie to protect the people you love?
It's a moral ambiguity that Hall leaves echoing long after the final page.
Thank you for joining us as we unpack the layers of Broken Country. We highly encourage you to explore the novel for yourself, dive into those complexities, and uncover the final verdict.